Pedigree charts are diagrams that display the biological relationship within a family and how a particular trait/disease can be passed on. Pedigree charts can also be used to determine if the disorder follows an autosomal or sex-linked pattern. Pedigree charts also contain a universal set of symbols as shown in slide 3 that make them easy to understand.
The question for this assignment is, two families, one with a history of having albinism and the other with a history of red-green color blindness, have a child. What is the probability that their offspring expresses the traits of both albinism and color blindness? First, we'll look at what albinism is. Albinism is a lifelong condition that affects production of melanin. Melanin is the pigment responsible for color in our skin, hair, and eyes. There are two types of albinism. There's OCA and OA, and the causes are shown here. For this assignment, we will be looking only at OCA, which follows an autosomal recessive inheritance pattern, meaning a child must inherit 2 copies of the albinism gene, one from each parent to have the condition or to express the trait. In a random population, the probability of someone having the OCA albinism gene is 1 in 70 people. This probability will be used in the calculations to follow.
Mode of inheritance of an X-linked recessive color blindness. X-linked recessive color blindness follows an X-linked recessive inheritance pattern. This means the gene responsible for the condition is located on the X chromosome. Fathers to children. Affected fathers cannot pass the condition to their sons. They pass the Y chromosome, but can pass the affected X chromosome to their daughters, who become carriers. According to the Colorblind Awareness Organization and other scientific sources, the probability of someone having the X-linked recessive colorblindness gene varies by gender. Males, approximately in 1 in 12 males, about 8% are affected by red-green color blindness due to their single X chromosome. Females, approximately 1 in 200 females, about 0.5% are affected, while about 1 in 8 females, 12 to 13%, are carriers of the gene. This reflects the X-linked recessive inheritance pattern, where males are more likely to express the condition and females are more likely to be carriers.
Initially, we should determine the genomic makeup of all the individuals of the pedigree chart. The affected ancestral individual on the right-hand side of the tree are shaded blue, meaning that they are homozygous recessive for this disease and will display that disease. That being said, the offspring from grandparents will either be heterozygous and be a carrier for that affected allele, or be homozygous recessive for the disease. Since the pedigree chart does not display affected offspring, it is safe to assume that the offspring are all heterozygous, meaning the probability of the offspring to be the carriers of the disease is now 100%. Since there is a direct outgroup mating into the family for the pedigree chart, we are going to assume the potential that the outgroup should carry that disease allele, which will be 1 in 70. To assume that the outgroup potentially has a disease allele, since we are provided that information, and is mating into the family, which also has that disease allele, the potential for them to pass that allele and also not display homozygous recessive features shown in the chart would be 2 out of 3, since they cannot be homozygous recessive. On the bottom left-hand side of the pedigree chart, it displays that the affected offspring of the mating between offsprings of the generation before has the disease. This indicates that the probability of the homozygous carrier on the right-hand side of the tree has to be 100%, since the pedigree chart tells us that they are affected. Since the final offspring of the 2 lineages are heterozygous on the right and homozygous recessive on the left, the probability that their offspring will be homozygous recessive will be 1 out of 2. In conclusion, after multiplying all the probabilities of both sides together, which are 1 in 70, 2 out of 3, and 1 out of 2, the probability of the offspring having disease and displaying it will be 1 out of 210.
To find the probability that the final offspring, which is shown as a diamond symbol, is affected, we need to first look at each side of the pedigree chart separately. Now let's first start with the left side of the pedigree chart. The second generation parents are related, which means that they will both carry the recessive allele. This gives them a 100% chance of passing it on, so the probability is 1 for each of them. Therefore, the third generation offspring will also have a probability of 1 by inheriting the affected allele. Now, let's look at the right side of the pedigree chart. The probability of that an individual from the general population is a carrier is given as 1 over 200 in the question. This applies to the mother in the second generation who's marrying into the family. The father in the second generation is affected, which means that he must have inherited the recessive allele from his homozygous affected mother. Therefore, this also gives him a probability of 1 of passing the affected X chromosomes to his daughters. Since the third generation male is affected, his probability will stay as 1 since he received the affected X chromosome from his mother. Now, the probability of the final offspring in the pedigree chart in the fourth generation can be found by multiplying all the probabilities of both sides together, which would be 1 over 200 multiplied by 1/2. Thus, the probability that the final offspring will have this disease is 1 over 400. So, the final probability that the offspring will express both albinism and colorblindness can be found by multiplying the probabilities of the final offspring having each disease separately. This is because each event is independent and multiplying the probabilities gives the chance of both traits happening together. Therefore, we should multiply 1 over 400 times 1 over 210 to give a final probability of 1 over 84,000.